Welcome back to the United States of America, everybody. I am one of the two pair of your co-hosts, Brandon Lirio, three-time Mr. Natural Olympia, as well as amateur strongman competitor with a gimp arm thanks to my injury from last year. Coming fresh off a powerlifting meet, though. Pretty happy about that. Geographically dislocated here in Ohio is my Figure Pro co-host, Layla Pollock. Say hi to everybody at home, Layla.
Hi, everybody at home.
Her voice is vastly superior to mine and much preferred. Unfortunately, when we talk about preferences, Layla and I have done an audit of most of the fitness sports that people buy tickets for, and we're here to tell you, bodybuilding's just fucking boring to watch.
It's so boring.
Yeah, here's the thing. Normally, I'd say, hey, this is just a clickbaity thing, and we don't really feel that way. Dude, bodybuilding is pretty fucking boring to watch, though.
No, I absolutely feel that way. And anybody that has ever been to a bodybuilding show also feels that way.
And what's weird about it is, like, the memes that exist. Like, I don't really know. I know that in the comments section of both this video and in any of our teaser trailers and stuff, people are going to be like, why are you such huge proponents of bodybuilding when realistically you say all these negative things about it? I love bodybuilding. I'm also self-aware to be looking at something, watching something the same way someone looks at a movie they really like and be like, no one else would like this. I like it for a specific purpose. And, yeah, the memes are all out there where even, especially, I'll say this, when they switched, because we did, a lot of other federations did, single show running orders make it helpful because you could just see your people.
Oh, yeah.
And then go, right?
Man, oh, man.
But the NPC way of doing things where not only is there 2 shows, but you also need 2 tickets, twice the expense to get in. Like, what are we doing here?
Dude, that shit is fucking brutal.
It's not a UFC event. It's not a WWE WrestleMania.
Brutal.
Like,
it is brutal. Not even fucking close, man. Not even fucking close, man. It is incredibly boring to participate in as a competitor. I don't know. I've had some other competitors comment on this too. It's almost like a huge fuck you. Like, you spent all this time, like, for the Olympia. I was in that back room for 9 hours, and I wasn't even the person there for the longest amount of time. There were girls that had been there since 8 in the morning, and I was there about noon.
And I want to
insane.
Come to both Layla's defense and the defense of the industry in general, where it's like, if you have a show where 400 people show up, but it varies from year to year, where it's like 180 here, 400, it becomes difficult logistically, right?
400 competitors, not audience.
Right. Sorry, I was thinking of it again like a competitor, not, hey, what are you listening to? I feel bad because I understand how hard the logistics of something like that are. But on the other side, too, the NPC also has those problems. The IFBB has those problems where, how many times have we seen, like, dude, how many Olympias are we going to have where people complain about the lighting or, complain about not being able to peak correctly because, the Nick Walker was backstage and they needed to do an interview or whatever. Like, I just don't understand how at this point we haven't figured out to a very specific degree exactly how much time is needed for divisions that are growing, divisions that are shrinking, when to do the overalls, when to do like shouts out for people who are put the show together. I just recently, last year, went to the Arnold Classic, and I'm not saying it was without incident, but at the same time, I felt like I had enough time to leave the venue when the show was over and get dinner. I knew when the show was going to start and when it was going to end. And I think the problem is that when you have a restricted pool of competitors to like 16 people, which is essentially what the Olympia is at any rate in terms of females, males, bodybuilding, figure, it doesn't matter. At that point, you have 16 people or so to work around. So you're selecting the best and then being like, okay, not only is it impressive to watch these people, they should know when to be there, how long it takes to pump up if something's not going right, when to get their posing routine, music to the director, whatever it is. When it's a show that doesn't limit the competitors, right? you now have an exponential amount of inputs that you have to work around. So I'm
thought about that.
I'm susceptible to the plight of the director of the event for sure. But we're really not even talking about that. We're talking about the spectacle of it, right? Having fresh off a powerlifting meet, I say this to my competitors. Bodybuilding made me who I am. All of these trophies, the majority of them are bodybuilding. Aesthetic sports are, by both of our definition, one of the toughest things you could do. You have to time it to the minute. I get it. But powerlifting and strongman is just way more fun. Like, it's just more fun to participate, spectate, hear about. It's easier to understand most of the time. Like,
I can't tell you how many times clients at the restaurant will ask me, okay, so you like go on stage and you lift stuff.
I love it.
And how stupid I have to feel to be like, no, I just go on stage and do this. Like, it's so dumb. It's so dumb. Who wants to watch that? Nobody. That's why there's 40 people in the crowd.
Yeah. And here's
one thing.
And like I said, this is always going to change based on what federation, what show, what the title is, you know, what section of the United States or the world you're in. I totally understand that. But if you talk about the longevity of something, even when people are watching, let's say, a bad football game, and you're there to watch your team and they get stomped.
It's still good bad action. Like, it's action, at least.
And I will say this. Look, I've been to bad football games where I leave at halftime because I'm like, there's no point in watching this. If someone offered me tickets to next week's game, I'd probably take them still. Whereas if you didn't know someone who was in the bodybuilding show, or you didn't know someone who was getting on stage or a coach that was backstage, the odds of you taking free bodybuilding tickets unless you really liked the sport, dude, I don't think the percentage would be very high, to be honest with you. Like, it's a long day. It's so specific. The judges' criteria is very loose. It changes from show to show, division to division. So,
I mean, the truth is there's just nothing happening. You just see rounds and rounds of people. Some of them are really aesthetically pleasing and have done the sport well and right and have genetics. And then there's just everybody else, you know? And that's part of the reason I give so much grief to competitors that show up that aren't like fully conditioned and have brought their best. It's like, you are wasting everyone's time.
Yours included.
Yes, yours included. All the other competitors' time, and the audience that has to like suffer through watching you run around on stage. Like, just don't go. Just don't show up.
So let's say this, right? Because this podcast is not just we're going to bash, you know, bodybuilding for 55 minutes.
All right, that's Layla's podcast.
I guess my question would be, if we take a look at what makes the other sports that you would go to watch fitness-wise fun, right? Even the combine, the NFL combine, which is undrafted rookies and, you know, a bunch of people who are trying to make a name for themselves to show teams how good they are, right? People will pay hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to just go watch the combine. But the reason that's fun is because you're trying to watch people continuously set a new ceiling. And the ceiling is objective. It either is 26 reps or it's 27 reps. When you're at a powerlifting meet, I want to see that guy pull 700. If he's 240 and I'm 165 and I pull 550, that's still impressive to watch, to see. And now I want to see the next guy who's 165 try and pull 555, right? The issue I think that it really comes down to, though, and I'll parallel bodybuilding with, unfortunately, CrossFit, because there isn't a continuous ceiling that's been set. You're watching people do the same thing over and over again. You know, with strongman, you could argue the same thing, but it's at a level that's so high that it could literally kill some of the competitors that you're watching. Whereas if you take a look at something like CrossFit, it's so much going on that, yes, someone's going to quit, some people are going to finish, but ultimately the reason CrossFit exists is because everybody that steps out on that stage should be within, like, a normal window of performance where, even though we would consider it, you know, everybody's doing great, they would consider it a vast difference between first and last place. So then my question becomes this, right? Take a look at a sport like bodybuilding. From your perspective, who's much better at marketing, and your perspective of someone who will tell federation heads and tell other competitors the real truth about it, what is it that you think could even be done to make it less boring? Like, really get asses in the seats like, hey, this is what I want to see. What do you want to see at a bodybuilding show?
I've thought about that, and honestly, I mean, I feel like I continuously arrive at, like, the sport itself just isn't interesting. There's no performance aspect. We all go on stage and it's like, look at my quad. Like, how fucking exciting can you possibly make that? So I thought, well, the Olympia garners a good audience and a lot of money, right? So how's the Olympia different? I mean, granted, they're
it's invite. Yeah, for me, it's the invite. The invite only means you're always going to get what most would consider the top 12 to 16 people in any given division.
Okay. So okay, yeah, so there's that. Like, no matter who steps out on that stage, you're going to be wowed and amazed, right? That could be a part of it, maybe. I mean, like you were saying, like capping the competitor list per division. But then, like you said, you can't really just rule out who gets to participate and who doesn't, you know? But like, if they had a prejudging round that wasn't open to the public and then only, I don't know, like something like that. The other thing I thought of, and this is a lament I've had for especially the women's divisions, is like, we don't get to do like fucking pose downs. We don't get to do any of that like fighter mentality, camaraderie. Like, there's no fucking personality in these shows. And the one thing I don't like is, like, that is the one thing that is nearly stood to be my detriment, is having like too much going on with the way I look. Not necessarily, it's never actually hurt me, but like, people have said that, like, your tattoos are gonna fuck you up. It's like,
yeah, that's people who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Anyway, here's the thing. I think that you are onto something, and it's like a small flag that I've had too. What if, right? And I don't know how you would implement this or how fair it would be, but what if the confirmation round to confirm who the top people were to get on stage and pose against each other was the posing routines, where it's not part of the final score.
That would make it look like a fucking competition against other competitors, not a competition against yourself.
Well, here's the thing, right? Because first, you have to show up to the judges, let's say first thing in the morning, or if it was a big show, you could show up the day before, and it would be a normal lineup where every person from every division gets their posing routine for 90 seconds or 60 seconds, depending on if you're pro or amateur or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the judges will pick 16 finalists. And again, the problem is this too, right? Because I know this is going to come up. We're not the Olympia because there's a bunch of other divisions and weight classes and A, B, C, D, E, F. This is a loose structure that we're talking about in terms of trying to figure out how to make bodybuilding more interesting of a sport where it has viewership and has draw and still allows for the same relative structure of the sport to exist. So I'm not saying that this is the final thing that me and you have come to. This is it. Boom, let's put it together. But there does come a time where, especially in the NPC, right, which I don't compete in, that literally you get 5 guys on stage next to one guy that you're like, okay, why are they even looking at the first guy? Like, he wins. Just move him to the side. And I've seen that happen where they take that guy and move him to the side, and it's like, if you know he won, he gets the least amount of time on stage, you know? Or vice versa, right? Now the argument also becomes the promoter then, I guess, reserves the right to just push people out and be like, you're not in finals. Which, again, is sort of what we're talking about as a benefit, but the detriment to the sport would be you're basically alienating competitors before they ever get a chance to actually get good judges' feedback. But there's something there. There's a nugget of something there that I'm like, I don't want promoters to push people out of the sport and be like, I've decided you're already not good enough. But if what we're talking about is excitement in bodybuilding and bringing something in, we all agree there's something missing.
That's a fair thing to do in any other sport. Like, I'm sorry you didn't make the cut. Sorry you didn't make the team. You're not good enough. You're going to be the weakest link. You're going to bring everybody down. Why can't that apply to bodybuilding? If they could look at you and be like, yeah, you're never going to win.
I mean, the argument against it would simply be if you're the worst. I mean, I remember, dated myself a little bit, and I don't really follow this team all that well, so I don't know how long ago this has happened to somebody else. I think it's only ever happened since I've been watching football, since like 2004 until now, which is almost 20 years. The 2 seasons that I can remember that were like, man, why is this team even show up to these games, would be when the Lions had a winless season, where they show up to their last game of the season in the NFL with no wins. And it's like, man, how do you even play that game when you're just like, I don't even want to fucking be here, dude. There's nothing we can do. And I think the Browns, if I remember correctly, also had like a pretty, either they won 1 game or they had a winless season. Excuse me, coming off a little sickness. So you could argue, right, even if you have a winless season in the NFL, you still got to show up for all of the regular season games. You can't just get voted out by Roger Goodell or, the other owners of the teams and be like, hey, you're not allowed to come out here and play anymore. So let's ask this question then. Just because bodybuilding is not super fun to watch or entertaining, you as a newer competitor to the sport, you've said, I think this is the toughest sport to do. I think that doing this is, detrimental to your health, but very valuable in terms of what you can handle as a person, how much grit you're made of. Do you, as a newer competitor and somebody who's relatively new to the sport, do you believe that unwatchability of it is a detriment that makes it where you wouldn't want to participate in the future? As a competitor, I mean, not as a spectator.
I mean, yeah. It's just, I keep cycling. It's just so fucking boring. It's such a fucking boring process to put yourself through. There's nothing exciting. You sit around for hours to go on stage to do what?
Yeah. What if?
What? And the other thing I don't like is when I try to do this, like, I don't even really know what Conor McGregor did for the UFC, but I know he brought a lot of attention to it. And I feel like the way that I try to bring attention to bodybuilding with this, like, character of mine is not appreciated. I'm sorry, but it seems like the mentality around bodybuilding is we all have to go and support each other and call each other beautiful. And your suit color is so pretty. I want to fucking do that. So I feel like maybe I'm just a little soured right now, but I feel like what I was trying to do as far as bring people's attention to this sport is not being well received. Like,
well, I mean, I would argue that because of the platform he had, right? I mean, there are a lot of people who hated what Conor McGregor did for the UFC. There are people who don't believe that the unlikability of a character in terms of being a heel, if you're really that person or if you're playing it up, brings the right mentality of, like, I'll put it to you like this. There's a reason why, as a Giants fan, the Eagles from Philadelphia are, and I would argue too, I guess, the Cowboys, but the Eagles stand out to me as a franchise that people believe that their fans, even when they're in their own stadium, are just the fucking worst. And it's because the trope is they boo everybody. They boo the Eagles, they boo Santa Claus, they boo everybody, right? They boo Bill Burr, they boo everybody. So, like, I don't necessarily think this was a knock on you in terms of what you were trying to do to bring more of that energy to the stage, especially considering the fact that, like, you felt you were doing it as an excitability tool. But I don't really think that in either direction. I think that if you had the directorial and then the actual
chops to back it up, which I don't.
No, you do. It's the other side. It's the production side, where I think the reason it was valuable for Conor McGregor is because they were looking for a mouthpiece and they already had hundreds of thousands of viewers in terms of TV viewers. And millions of people wanted to buy pay-per-view and all this other stuff. So him running his mouth and then getting either the chance to beat the other guy up or having his ass beat is the same reason why it works for Logan Paul in boxing, right? Say what you want about the Paul brothers, but I understand the argument that he's picking guys who are past their prime and, all the knockouts that he has, because I think right now he's like 13-0 or something like that. that every time he invites a new pro boxer to come box him, he beats him. Same thing, he beat Nick Diaz, an MMA fighter. But people are like, yeah, but he's doing that because he's waiting for them to be out of their prime and then picking them. Like, give him somebody else. Look, man, I wouldn't go against Roy Jones Jr. He'd beat my ass, but Logan Paul beat him. You know what I mean? Like, he is still relatively good at what he does, and being a mouthpiece for that, people want to see him get his ass beat. And so for him to have not had that happen yet, it rolls the snowball down the hill where more people want to watch and watch and watch. Mm-hmm. I don't know that you'd be able to do that in bodybuilding outside of the first time it was done with Kai Green and Phil Heath, simply that's because
exactly, like, that kind of rivalry, that story is going to be around forever. Has there ever been a rivalry like that?
No, but I think that's because they truly didn't like each other. And it was one guy.
I truly don't like anybody, so I should be sad.
See, that's the difference, though. That just makes, and again, I'm not saying this about you as a negative thing. What I mean is, if I were on the outside looking in, someone who says that makes you cocky and to the point where, like you said, I don't like anybody. So you want to beat everybody, which is just being good at a sport. Kai Green and Phil Heath didn't like each other, where if you left them in a room alone, not bodybuilding, they probably would have beat the shit out of each other, right? You want to see that in the most acceptable way possible that their sport allows. And I just don't know, with a pool of competitors so large, that you'd be able to capitalize on that voice right now. Not you, anyone. Because there's just too many people out there fighting for the same relative spot in the spotlight. You know what I mean? This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Nirvana Super. Nirvana Super is HMB-infused water formulated by Dr. Naji, who is one of the lead medical research scientists at Vanderbilt University. Originally used to help stop muscle wasting in trauma victims as well as disease-ridden patients, this recovery tool boasts benefits like faster muscle recovery, increased joint health, a rise in physical endurance capabilities during exercising, and can even slow the appearance of aging. It also comes in some seriously good flavors and multiple delivery methods. So if you want to figure out how HMB can help you today, visit feelsuper.com and use Natty at checkout to save.
I guess the way that I think about myself and the character that I have isn't really so much that I don't like anybody. So have you seen, I think it's called Warriors. It's the two brothers that have to battle on stage with each other. Tom Hardy.
Yeah. Warrior. Yeah, it's a UFC-based movie where the two brothers fight each other and their dad's an alcoholic, right?
Think so. Yeah. That's it.
Haven't seen it in like a decade, but yeah.
That.
Yeah. But again, right? It's one-on-one, and it's brothers that have a backstory. Like, I'll put it to you like this. If Kai Green and Phil Heath showed up at Nationals as amateurs and pulled that shit, they'd have been banned. Like, everyone would have been like, you two got to get the fuck out of here. They already were the best.
Yeah.
And they were arguing still who was better. And then everybody was like, well, I like Kai Green being down to earth, and he's really, like, reserved and quiet. And Phil Heath is this guy that was always supposed to be the heir apparent. And so him being cocky just is him playing into his persona. Like, the reason we liked watching that was because it was genuine. But the funny thing was, all the other competitors on stage, if you hear them talk about it, were like, they kind of turned it into the Phil and Kai show, which was good for the IFBB. But it was bad for all of us who still thought we had a shot at being the best in the world. You know what I mean? Like, we didn't like it very much.
I don't know if I have any sympathy for that. I'm sorry. Like, they did something you didn't. They were people that you weren't. They brought something that you did not. Like, they did the thing that you wish you had done, that you wish you were in their spot, but you're not. I don't know.
So do you...
Were they arguably the two best?
That arguably, for sure, arguably, yeah.
So during that period of time, did anybody else? I mean, no one really beat Phil Heath.
Well, they called him the Gift for a reason, but I mean, I believe, and I'm partial because I love him, but I believe that at his absolute maximum peak, if Flex Lewis showed up on stage, even though he was, probably 20, 30 pounds lighter than the two of them, he may have given them a run for their money because of his proportions. And he competed in the Open for a while and just, went to the 212 and won it the reason he retired was because nobody could beat him, and they needed a new 212 champion. He was fucking tired, and he was having babies with his wife, and it was time for him to retire. He's getting older. But I believe that in their prime, if they peaked absolutely correctly, that guys like Dennis Wolf, Juan Morel, Flex Lewis, I believe if he was in that lineup, guys like Derek Lunsford and if he was still around, Dallas McCarver, like that could have been an incredible lineup of guys. But, that's basically like saying if you had the 98 Bulls after 98, could I select other players and make the best team and, really give them a run? Sure. So yeah. If we take like the semantics out of it and we dial it back to like the watchability of it, what if even in bigger shows, we were able to take to a much closer degree, like with a 30-minute window, and say, this is when figure is going on. So if you want to watch figure, come in at this time. Figure competitors need to peak between the hours of 12:35 and 2:15 p.m. And then give their numbers a 20-minute window. You know what I mean? So that everybody has the exact same advantage for peaking correctly. The crowd is always only there to see you, right? And arguably then I could say too that you would save money on venues. I'm not saying you want small venues, but like the amount of times that people spring for like the MGM Grand Casino Ballroom and there's like 48 people in the crowd versus, you have a bigger show on the East Coast that gets like a high school and there's not enough seats. And it's like, I also wonder too, even outside the window perspective, like, are there too many shows?
I think there's too many shows.
I'm not going to disagree with you. I'm staunchly in this camp where I believe each federation has like areas of the United States and of the world that they're stronger in, that we always ask this question, how could we grow natural bodybuilding? How can we stop having the same 12 federations fight for crumbs off the same pie? And I really thought long and hard about this recently and was like, if every federation decided, okay, the OCB is really big down south and up the East Coast, and the USBF is large in the Ohio River Valley, and, the GBO is big in Texas and Arizona, INBA is huge overseas and on the West Coast, and the WNBF and the INBF tend to be stronger in the Pacific Northwest and then in through the Rust Belt. If you said, okay, just like the United States, let's draw some boundaries and let's center our promotions in these general areas and say, okay, every federation should have between 10 and 15 shows a year, but it's in a smaller geographical area. And then we have 4 shows that are natural bodybuilding's title shows. The PNBA, INBA Natural Olympia, the OCB Yorton Cup, WNBF Worlds, and maybe like the GBO Atlas or the NPF Natural Sandows, whatever it is. And basically say any pro from those specific areas, those are your multi-federation. And then all the federation heads will say, okay, I'm going to send X amount of my competitors to these title shows, and then we limit it, where the amateur can be just like the amateur Arnold and the amateur Olympia. If you want to go watch and see these diamonds in the rough, it'll be taking place from Friday to Saturday, all day. It's $100 to get in. Watch whatever you want. But on Saturday night, between 1 p.m. and 11 p.m., the top 16 figure competitors from any natural federation in the world, they're handpicked by their federation heads. This is my 4 guys, this is my 4 guys, this is my 4 guys, this is my 4 guys. dude, talk about building up to an Olympia-style natural bodybuilding Super Bowl, where it's like the top 4 guys from the INBA showed up, the top 4 guys from the OCB showed up, the best figure competitors from the WNBF showed up. You know who you're going to see. You know who you're rooting for. You know what the title should mean and look like. Boom. And I could say to you, oh, there's this girl from the INBF, and she thinks she's the best that's ever been. In fact, I'll say it like this. Becky Pateman.
I need it to be clear, I don't think that about myself.
And
I don't think I'm the best that's ever been. Are you kidding me?
No. Look, at any given...
Bodybuilding, definitely not in regards to bodybuilding. Maybe a couple other things, but not really. But
I would argue, too, even for us, like, we want to be the best when we show up. But until we win the title, you and I are pretty self-aware where once we win, we go, I went up there and I did the damn thing and I proved I was the best at that time.
Mm-hmm.
By the Sunday after the show, like, okay, this is what have you done for me lately? The show's over. So if you don't come back better or at least as good as you were last year, you can't say you're the best even right now. I train like I'm the best and I show up assuming I'm going to be one of the best. But until I win the show, I'm not the best that's ever been. And I'm not even the best right now.
That is what I want to be clear about. I do train like I think I'm the best.
Sure.
And if I'm being honest with you, and I think I told you this story, when I was behind stage, before I went on stage, people were asking to get photos with me.
Yeah.
A lot of people want to stop and talk to me. When we were pulled off stage from the first round of prejudging, 2 of the girls that were in my class pulled me aside and were like, "You look great." Nobody said that to the winner.
Yeah.
So there's something about what I have that I don't think is the best for bodybuilding. I don't believe that. But I kind of hate that I'm about to say this, but what if in these competitions there was a best of bodybuilding and also like America's favorite? Because I think I would crush that.
I mean, the IFBB has it now at the Olympia with the People's Champion. You know what I mean?
That's who I am, and I didn't realize it until later. Like, but that's the category I fall into. I don't know. I mean, you could tell me that you think I'm a world-class figure competitor, and that may be true, but in my heart, I feel like I'm not really a bodybuilder. Anyway, we're digressing. I'm digressing.
Well, what's really funny, right? I'm going to take a page out of your book here. I'm going to take a page out of your book and be like, so what are you trying to say? That you want a participation medal? A different medal than the winner medal? Or no, I'm just kidding.
Because, I mean, I don't know. I have to think about that. Like,
it's not.
Maybe I'm participating in the wrong sport because I believe.
Right. What I'm saying is.
Stage that's getting asked to being taken photos, like, that means something. But
it does.
It's probably not the sport of bodybuilding, you know? Like.
100%.
And, you know?
So.
For some reason, people really, really, really want me to win this thing. But I don't deserve to win. Like, the girl who won fucking smoked me. There was nothing I could have done, you know?
So let the girl I was bringing up, Becky Pateman, she won a lot of shit. I think she's the WNBF world champion. She is the Natural Olympia world champion for the INBA, PNBA, and I mean it's
all that, yeah.
You just see her and you're like, Jesus Christ. Which, by the way, even as a spectator, I'm a promoter, but I'm also a man. Her attractiveness, like, she is what the sport would want to see because it's muscular, it's fit, but at the same time, she's beautiful and she's well-spoken, and I don't think I've ever seen her bring it to the stage off. And the reason I bring her up is to say, if, let's say, the PNBA picked her and was like, we're sending her to the Orton Cup, and then she showed up and, you know, I can't remember her, I think she was actually Women's Physique. I think her Instagram handle, she was just voted Women's Athlete of the Year by Natty News Daily, I think it was, on Instagram, where basically it was, you know, that's their golden child, where it's like, nobody's beaten this chick. She's a 20-year-old, 21-year-old women's physique competitor, and if, let's say, they were both figure competitors, and we put them on stage next to each other, you could build that rivalry and be like, the best of this federation versus the best of this federation, and then some dark horse candidate comes out of nowhere from the NPF and just fucks everybody up, and you're like, this is the Super Bowl right here. This is what it's about. You know what I mean? I think in my head, I've gone over this a million times, and I'm like, if you agree from the outside looking in that a rivalry and building the excitement is really something that's going to take this sport to the next level, I don't really know another way to do that without taking the money aspect out of it, structuring how many people can show up, and then building the rivalry before they show up. I don't know that there's another way to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've thought about that a lot, like having that kind of like UFC, MMA fighter mentality rivalry. I do think there needs to be a smaller number of shows. 100%. There are way too many fucking shows to choose from. And a lot of them are small time that don't do anything
That's
for anybody.
That's the issue, is they're so small that it's like, oh, I went and it was, 20 people, which again, if that's how you get on stage, and especially if it was 2 divisions and each of them had 10 people and it took you 20 minutes to get through them, sure, okay. It's not like I'm trying to take that title away from anybody. I mean, I've promoted shows that were that small.
Do you really deserve a title? Like, I'm sorry, I know people that are pro and then people that are actually pro. Completely different physiques.
Sure. I think
so they had to give the award to somebody. I don't know, it just doesn't.
I think the danger you're falling into, though, is because we are existing in this strange time of bodybuilding where social media is so big and the sport it's not niche anymore. It's very well known, but well known to the aspect of we've seen $400,000 to $1.5 million worth of payouts walk across IFBB stages, and you go, why did I go to this smaller show? When realistically, the other argument can easily become, right, but if you take a look at the Highland Games or Strongman 10 years ago, it was exactly the same thing. Personal story, really quick. World's Strongest Man, 20 years ago, they used to have to go like this. Everybody, scoot in. Because when they were filming it, they needed it to look like there was a lot of people there, and there just wasn't. I just went to World's Strongest Man this year, and there were so many people that literally the official Strongman Games and World's Strongest Man had to come together and basically put out press releases and stuff going, we didn't expect all of you to show up. Like, we just didn't expect this many people because it grew so fast, right? All of that is just to say natural bodybuilding is not where untested bodybuilding is, but it pretty much is where it was 20 years ago, where it's just relatively growing at an exponential pace, but that because it's growing that way, everybody sees a value in it and they want their piece. And so they're promoting shows and they do 3 a year. One of them kicks off if they're lucky. But I think that what you're saying and what I'm agreeing with you in terms of there being too many shows is, I guess if I were the federation, I would have to say, let's take a look at a show like Mr. America, which has no qualifying shows and has no deviation for who can compete and who can't, and there's only one per year. And 150 people showed up last year, and I think they're expecting more to show up this year. So it's like, is more better? Because you're going to say, like, well, we need to have people, they do this, they have to do that. If you have the structure set up where it was like, this is how you qualify for these 4 shows, and we only have 20 shows per year, and then another federation goes, well, we occupy the West Coast, and here's our 20 shows, and these are our qualifying shows for the 4 natural bodybuilding Super Bowl shows, the playoffs, right? Mm-hmm. I think you're right that it's so saturated that people will go, I'll just wait for the next one. I'll just wait for the next one. Mm-hmm. And then either you become irrelevant or the sport becomes irrelevant to you, and then the actual shows themselves almost become irrelevant because not enough people show up. You know what I mean?
That's the camp I fall in, is like,
yeah.
When I went to Battle for Cancer, there were like 3 of us.
Yeah.
I feel that was a waste of my time.
And what's
I don't feel like I deserve that pro title,
Yeah.
So when I competed at the Olympia on the amateur stage, there were other girls that were mad at me because they're like, "You're already pro. Why are you competing as an amateur?" I was like, "Because I don't feel like that was a proper win."
And I'm in your camp. I'm in your camp, by the way, in terms of people who go like, "Well, you already have a pro card. Why would you still compete amateur?" Because you didn't feel like you wanted to take that step on the pro stage yet because you needed a real shot at competing against the best of the amateurs to go, now I know I'm one of the best. Now I can step up.
Now I know if I belong or if I don't.
Right.
Yeah.
And I have I think
getting a fucking pro title. Like, do I deserve it or do I not? Like, I need to know.
And look, that's a personal bound that you put on yourself, and I wouldn't discount anybody who felt the opposite, because I've said to my competitors like this, it's not your job to worry about how many people show up to compete against you. It's your job to show up with a pro-level physique to go, I told you I was a pro physique. Yeah. You know what I mean?
At the end of the day, like, even if I weren't pro, even if I didn't have that title, you're still not going to win against me. And neither of us are going to win against the girl that won. So what's it fucking really matter? It's not like I'm getting in the way of your chances.
Yeah.
Because title and you don't. Like, I'm either going to get in the way of your chances.
And
because of my, like,
that comes from our competitive nature as people too, where it's like, I don't care if you've been in the sport a year or 50 years. I want to beat you because I want to be the best. Like, I don't care the piece of paper you carry in your pocket. If we stopped at a stoplight and everybody got out and somebody goes, okay, now all of you fight and the guy who wins gets $1 million. I don't care if you're a UFC fighter or a pregnant grandma. I'm like, I want that $1 million. I'm fucking everybody up. I hope that's the clip that goes in the teaser.
You remember your wife when she was pregnant? You remember that hormonal rage? My bet is on her.
Listen, she's not pregnant. My bet's on her.
No, dude. I've always you want to find a fucking army that'll rule the world. Get women that have recently been broken up with, women on their periods, and anyone that's pregnant. That's an army that'll fuck shit up.
And if you're lucky and they're together long enough, their cycles will sync up. Yeah.
Can you imagine the rate? Whoa. Anyway.
I'm gonna get canceled.
No, that's the sport of body. That's how you make it interesting. Get a bunch of raged out women.
So, and a couple of years ago, and I've actually tried to talk a small powerlifting federation that I compete in called the APA to talk to the INBA and talk to other federations, because one of the things I love about the Mr. America weekend is that they sign up with the USAPL, and in the same weekend you can watch powerlifting. So now my question to you is, we know what the sport of bodybuilding is. We're not mincing words. We know what it is. All of us know what it is. Could you make the actual event more exciting and just make your bread and butter in terms of people coming to compete and watch in bodybuilding, and just basically make every bodybuilding show a fitness mini expo and sort of couple things together where it's like, okay, if you go to these 5 title shows for the WNBF, there'll always be a USAPL powerlifting meet. If you go to these PNBA shows, these 5 will always have an APA powerlifting meet and a 6-strength strongman meet. You know what I mean? Official Strongman Games always participates in the Arnold, and I believe the last couple years has also participated at the Olympia, right? USAPL competed at the Olympia this last year because my good friend and coach Jen Thompson competed there, and she was invited to compete at the Arnolds again this year. Even if you don't like bodybuilding, there's something for you, and if your companion is like, yeah, but I want to go watch Nick Walker, okay, or I want to go watch Mitchell Hooper fucking push the wheel of pain in the strongman tent, you can do that, right? Like, there's other things to watch.
Ultimately, aren't you just describing the Arnold?
I wouldn't even say the Arnold, because it doesn't have to have a fitness expo where it's like Celsius has a guy signing autographs. It's more along the lines of like, if what we're saying is bodybuilding is a sport, right? But there's different leagues and different aspects to it. You can couple it with another sport that is more physical and draw a bigger crowd. And then if what you want to do is basically say, you know, bodybuilding is not about rivalry, but more about showing off a specific prowess of the physique, then basically what you have is a feat of strength and a feat of physique in the same event.
Yeah.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by NutraBio. NutraBio, with no compromise since 1996, they never hide behind proprietary blends and always tout transparent labels. With industry-leading formulations, all with clinical dosages of ingredients and products spanning from bodybuilders to athletes to just general health clients, NutraBio has exactly what you need to take your goals to the next level. Hit up NutraBio.com and use code word NATTY at checkout to save. Now,
the sentence itself, I feel like... is the nature of the sport what dooms the sport in and of itself? The prowess of a physique.
Now, here's what's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned this. There is one show that I know of, and forgive me if this person is still alive, because I believe he was going through some health issues, but a lot of people don't know that I believe it's The Rock used to compete in a very, very, very one-off but specific bodybuilding show run by a guy named Al Rosen in Florida, which was a 3-event weekend where you had to do a bodybuilding show, like a physical show of your physique, but you also had to participate in like a what's the word I'm looking for? An obstacle course race, like not the Tough Mudder, the smaller one. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Those type of adventure course races. And I believe a feat of strength as well, where it was like you had to do like a dead and a bench contest on Friday, the adventure race on Saturday, and then the bodybuilding contest on Sunday. And I might be butchering the fuck out of how it worked, but I know Al, we were friends on Facebook for many years, and that was his thing. It was like, if it's a fitness contest, make it all fitness as opposed to just one thing, because then you have to balance it, where it's like, yes, I look fucking great, but watch this, and then he goes and benches 400 pounds.
I feel like all of the alarms that go off immediately. How the fuck are you supposed to compete on a bodybuilding stage and then expect to lift anything ever?
So the only, or I should say the easiest parallel I could make would be Mariusz Pudzianowski, who was a very, very famous strongman from the 80s and 90s, who at any given time could have stepped on an IFBB bodybuilding stage and took top 3. This dude was yoked past his gills. He wasn't even a fish anymore. This motherfucker was an alien. And he was also one of the strongest guys on the planet and has won World's Strongest Man multiple times. At the time, he looked like that.
Why don't we know about this dude?
Because I told you, back then when it was Metrex running the World's Strongest Man, it wasn't a well-known event. But I'll actually have I'll have our producer Henry put up a photo of Mariusz Pudzianowski. And if you don't know who he is, go look him up. He was an absolute monster of a strength athlete, and you could see him coming from 40 miles away. You're like, if he walked in my house and was like, this is mine now, I'd be like, can I get my stuff out first? Like, just insane. It was insane. But you're right in the sense that since then, the closest we've come is like Thor. You know what I mean? Like Hafthor Bjornsson. He looks good, but he's not going to be a bodybuilding champion anytime soon. You know what I mean?
Okay, so cycling to your point, when I first started bodybuilding, my initial draw was fitness.
Yeah.
I wanted to do a performance. That seems fun. That seems interesting. Me as an athlete for the audience. Yeah, I just feel like going on stage and showing off your aesthetics.
So why not fitness then? Why didn't you choose fitness?
I think I let the outside world influence the direction I went, and everyone just told me I was built for figure.
Which, by the way, I mean, fitness is generally a figure look. And listen, I've met the actual IFBB Olympians for fitness, and many of my athletes have competed in fitness in the natural world. First of all, it is a very small amount of competitors because of what it takes. And if you are one of the best, dude, good luck trying to touch them. I mean, they're just... These routines are unreal.
Yeah. That's the thing is, I think at the end of the day, I don't have what it takes to be the best doing that.
Yeah.
The strength moves, especially at 33, like I'm already 33. Like, it's not like I train like a gymnast and can, do one of those weird ab moves on one of my...
Yet. Can't do it yet.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the same way I feel about fighting. Like, that's my dream job, is to be a fighter, but I know I don't have what it takes, you know?
You know, for me, especially when it comes to fighting, my main issue is, and I think for you it wouldn't be as big of a problem being in the women's divisions, but I trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a short period of time when I was in Illinois and then in California, and doing level 1 combatives even for the military is relatively early Brazilian jiu-jitsu and judo throws and things like that. Like most of the time too, if when I was at military bases and they couldn't get a level 1 combatives instructor, they would go to a Gracie endorsed Brazilian jiu-jitsu school and be like, okay, every Friday for, you know, the next 8 weeks, we're going to meet here and they're going to teach us BJJ 101. I'm too small. Strong as I am, I'm too small. Like, especially if you take fighting into account when it comes to back then when I'm, you know, a little older than you, not by much, but, you know, being 36, 37, it's like, I remember when the UFC didn't have basically but 12 rules and no weight classes. So you have a guy who's, my coach at the time was 335, and he literally was like, okay, lay down on the ground, and then he just put his knee in my chest, and I just tapped, and he goes, I'm not doing anything, and I'm like, I can't breathe. Look, I know.
I want to say yes. I think that is a comment for the comments saying I am too small to crush at jiu-jitsu, because there are some small motherfuckers.
It's why jiu-jitsu was created, was to get rid of the idea that you're too small or too weak. I get that too.
I think, but then I think on the other, like that only applies up to a certain point.
100%.
If you meet somebody that is big and also skilled. And that's the thing. That's the thing is, like, at the end of the day, like, science is not a choice. If you are bigger and you're skilled, you're fucked. I'm sorry. I'm a 5 foot, 100-pound woman. I'm not going to take on a grown man. It's not going to fucking happen. All right?
Which is hilarious, right? Because I'm very much empowering to my friends and my family, where if I really think they're good enough to do something, like, I know if it was me and a bunch of other mixed gender in a bar somewhere and it was me and Layla, my money would be on us. But if Layla went into a bar that was a bunch of fully grown biker dudes and she was like, I'm gonna fuck this guy up, I'd be like, you got this, and then she'd walk in the door and I'd look at the nearest person and be like, she don't got this. Like, it wouldn't happen.
It reminds me of the conversation you had with your wife about, like, what's the worst thing about being a woman. It's like, honestly, walking around in the world knowing you could get taken out by some average motherfucker.
Yep.
Like, that fucking sucks.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I try to tell people, and, like, especially women, like, as much as I train, as strong as I am, I'm sorry, reality's not a choice. Science is not a choice.
Which, like I said, I will concede that most people who follow Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will tell you, me, and anybody else, the reason the original Gracie Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu started was because that's what they were trying to prove, was that with a smart enough mentality and, you know...
manipulation of the body, that shit is fucking...
100%. But...
clever. Brutal.
But,
love it.
Right? You need to be an absolute fucking master of an expert to stack the deck in your favor, meaning that if a big-ass, if Mariusz Pudzianowski went up to, you know, prime, let's say, Cyborg, Chris Cyborg, Chris would probably beat the shit out of him because she knows what she's doing. She's of the 0.0001%. Like, the vast majority of women, even if they were close to his weight, would still get their ass beat because they just don't know the manipulation of body mechanics and, you know, physiology.
That's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. Yes, it
100%.
is a sport I have so much respect for. Yeah.
Sure. But, right?
But
what we're really talking about here then is...
skills that...
Yeah. So do you think then you're too old to learn those things, though, at only 33? I mean, you're in your prime.
Jiu-jitsu, no, but I feel like... I don't know if am I in my prime? Because I feel like, yeah, once you hit mid-30s, that's when your strength starts to decrease. I just feel like... You know me. The people I'm watching fucking Whitney Jones. I'm watching Oksana Grishna. Like, I'm watching these people, and I'm like, I'm 33. Can I learn how to do that in a year before I hit the stage? No.
I think that in a year is what would bite you in the ass. I think everything else you would be able to learn to a more than a rudimentary degree to be able to be successful.
Maybe that's it. It's like, I was being told as a figure competitor I could walk on stage right now and crush. As a fitness competitor, the skill I actually have to learn in order to do that, I'm not going to crush for a while.
Yeah, so I'm...
Not time. I don't have fucking time. I might be dead at 40.
I'm smiling because my initial idea behind my own video series, The World's Strongest Everyman, was I'm a strength outlier, and in terms of being a specialist for strength, I do have some positives genetically that are working for me, and I'm, you know, coming up on my late 30s here, and I'm still relatively healthy and in shape. So could I account for that pound-for-pound leverage difference and just wind up even in the, top 25% of the human embodiment of what strongman would be. And my first powerlifting meet, which was only a couple, 1-2 years ago, I said to my lifting partner at the time, Brian, I was like, hey, I want to compete in powerlifting. And he goes, cool, there's a meet coming up. Let's do the one here at Steel Beach. And I said, cool. What's the world record deadlift? Right there should tell you something about me. You don't ask that. Like, your first time you're going to go out there and try and rock a world record? Why would you do that?
No, you said this before, and I should have said it then. Like, no, those are the questions you do ask if you're an elite athlete.
Right.
Because as my boyfriend even said, like, if you're not crushing, what's the point?
But see, that's where we believe the same thing.
Yeah.
But that I also have now been very self-aware as I get older and have children, that I'm like, yeah, but not everybody is that. Not everybody has that. Not everybody programs that way,
What?
Sure.
I'm so tired of trying to justify the way I think, but not everybody else thinks. Whatever.
What I mean by that is this. I'll ask it in a different way. What I mean is, do you think that us thinking the way we do is a detriment to growing the sport and more of a benefit to pinholing it into something that people like you and I would think is top notch? You know what I mean? Like making it a caviar as opposed to making it McDonald's, where it's like, sure, you'll make a lot of money because it's restricted, but it's an acquired taste versus this is the best thing that's happened to bodybuilding since hamburgers and fast food. That because they're just so readily available and it's palatable to a majority of people. But when they make the best burger, you can still taste the difference. You know what I mean?
No, you did the thing where you ask a question in such a long-winded way. I have no idea what the fuck we're talking about.
So you're saying, right, if I say to someone, hey, can't you just make it like this because that will make it the 5% of people who are world record holders, world-class athletes, because the way we think is, why wouldn't you think that way? If you're not crushing it, why are you doing anything? Versus bodybuilding, fitness, strongman, powerlifting, that's for everybody. You can make a gourmet burger, but let's face it, the reason places like McDonald's are very successful is because they've standardized it to the point where it's very, very palatable and delicious, even though it's not for guys who are looking for Michelin star restaurants. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So then my question to you is, are we pigeonholing and pinholing the sport into being something that you and I, who want to see only world-class athletes no matter the cost, would like, versus being a benefit to the sport because more people in general will like it?
I think I have to answer that question with my gut. It's like,
Do it.
I just only can do what I want to do. I don't know how to compromise.
Okay.
Whatever it is I think is the right thing to do is the thing. I'll probably ask you for your advice so you feel included, but the truth is I'm going to do whatever I want anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, look at me. I've been told by so many modeling companies, like, you really pigeonholed yourself, didn't you? And I'm like, yeah, because this is what I am.
So you answered my question, really, because
gigs,
you answered the question, which is essentially, I don't care about the sport as a business. I care about the success of it as an athlete instead. And your type of athlete, which is different from other people's definition, even if they are the athlete, is, no, I want the best. I want to be the best. And whatever the best takes, they should be the ones who are coddled, advertised, waving flags. Like, these are the flagship guys. You know what I mean? As opposed to, the sport is for everybody. Everybody should be able to step up, and then you all have an equal footing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I like characters like Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
He's what makes, you know what I mean? Like, people
100%.
that didn't like basketball liked watching Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Because it was a beautiful thing to watch. Like, even if, I don't know, I could even maybe make the argument that even if Michael Jordan wasn't as good as he was, if he was still just that fucking interesting to watch, it does a lot for something, you know?
The only caveat I'll give to that is I think the reason he was that fun to watch was because the programming he had in his brain was essentially what made him a good athlete, where he basically tells you all about it. I wanted to make fools of these guys. I wanted to create rivalries because I wanted them to try to beat me and slip up. And, you know, I guess then...
Nick, and it was a beautiful thing.
So
He also has chops to back it up. I get that. Like,
yeah,
he can afford to be a dick because he's the fucking best.
sure.
Get that.
Which, again, you go back to the Conor McGregor thing, and as much as he's having mental health problems now and assaulting strangers and old men in bars, realistically, what we're talking about, though, is that he had the end-all, be-all of fighting spirit to back it up. And whether you liked him as a fighter or not, he was a multiple-time champion in multiple divisions and was the first one to ever hold the belt in 2 divisions at the same time. So in any case, right, as we kind of dial this all back around,
right.
There's so many different avenues and aspects of how to think about fitness as a sport and bodybuilding, right? I think CrossFit's pretty boring to watch, honestly, but I love watching strongman and powerlifting. My wife was at World's Strongest Man with me and wanted to see certain things, but how many times could she see somebody pick up a barbell with a dumpster on either side of it and be like, wow, that was super fun to watch? You know, it's not for her. It was for me. So with Layla and I talking about it, we would love to hear you guys sound off in the comments here and on Instagram. We're more asking a question about the sport in general as it's getting this weird precipice of change where it's like, we all know inherently that there's something missing and that all of these different federations are trying to grab at their piece of the pie, but that we all as athletes don't necessarily think that any of them have it figured out right now.
No, absolutely. Yeah, completely full send agree.
So let us know. What would you like to see in terms of the sport of natural bodybuilding? How could...
I am so curious if someone in the comments comes up with like, I would really like to see bodybuilders do A, B, and C, and that's fucking it. And we're like, holy shit, why have we never thought of that?
I will say this. I'm not going to name them. I'm not going to say how far it went. I recently had a person...
Was it porn? Don't anybody say porn.
I'll
fucking come out.
I recently had a person of considerable wealth who is a competitor say to me, you know, Brandon, you should like take some of these ideas and like you do it. And I was like, 1, I don't really want that. 2, you know, I don't have all the answers. But it was telling, right? That we're all as athletes talking to other athletes, we hear good or bad ideas and say yes or no. But none of us think not only that the sport is perfect, but that it's not even close. Like there's something missing. And hear me out. As all of these owners and, you know, proprietors and directors of these federations get older, they're getting older, right?
Yeah.
They built the federations to be something that it was when it was during its inception. And now we're getting to a point where it's like the world and how it runs and how social media is driven and how athletes are reached out to is so different that even in my late 30s, I don't get half the shit that the algorithm has to offer or different. I don't even know. I go to Instagram now and I see in people's bios, they have this little VSCO clip and you click it and it's like a different Instagram thing with, I'm like, I don't even know what this is. All of that is just to say this. We all can agree as the athlete pool that something is missing. None of us have all the puzzle pieces, but we can also all agree that if something major doesn't shift, to have these federations either talk to each other or have one slide out to the front of the pack, it's about to be a weird couple years in natural bodybuilding, man. And while I'm here for it, I would rather keep athletes like Layla on stage and keep athletes like her entertained in terms of wanting them to continue competing, and to hear that there are athletes that are getting turned off to the sport simply because of very small issues with making judging criteria known or making the fanfare big enough. All of the tools that we would need to figure out how to use them are there. And I'm hoping that in recent and now future years, we can come together and kind of figure out what that is to save the sport and to save really good competitors like Layla who are up and coming to want to continue to compete and to see the value in the sport over just the prep side of it, right? And so, Layla, I'm going to give you last words. You're coming off of your competitive year, needing, wanting, hoping for a break. What is it that you would like to see in natural bodybuilding over the next 3 to 5 years The floor is yours. Take as long or as short as you like.
I feel like it's the thing I've always said. I really want to see natural competitors max out. I do feel like I was on YouTube the other day and I saw another commenter that's like natural bodybuilding is a joke. And it kind of is. It kind of is. What if we just all became like stage props for like Tool?
So like use our sex appeal for someone else's gain kind of thing.
I mean, people would like go to see Tool and then we could just like run around the stage doing like weird poses that we wanted to do. I mean, that's not really a competition, but that'd be fucking sick.
I don't know, man. I think that goes back to like.
I'm gonna call Tool right now.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, guys, what do you think? Maynard, can I eat at your restaurant for free if I choose to pose out front? Well, look, guys, we don't have the answers. We're not going to figure it out today, but we'd love to hear you guys sound off, so feel free to let us know in our Instagram. Feel free to let us know here in the comments section. And
somebody, please.
We want to hear it. We need to hear it. So be sure to listen, rate, review, subscribe. Full video available on YouTube. I just want to say thanks on behalf of my co-host Layla and myself, and as always, here at the United States of America, we'll see you next time.
Sorry if that was boring.
I'm not.